They're both live now,
Yeah, you're good to go.
There we are. Right. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So we got Dom Hodge on the podcast from Baseline Fitness. Hang on, let me open this bottle for you. You have a bottle as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll get started in a moment. Right. Boom. There we are, sir.
Cheers.
Cheers. Huge. No, I appreciate you coming on. Obviously, we've had a little bit of conversation beforehand, but we haven't delved into too much. I think we just had to stop. Obviously, for the people listening and watching, we just had to stop the conversation because we were getting into it before we'd actually press record. So it's just carried on now. But I mean, if you want to tell everyone who's listening and watching, kind of who you are and what your background is, and give them a bit of an insight, that'd be awesome.
Without boring people too much, but I started off. I was in Morriston Comprehensive School, for those that know, in the Swansea area anyway. Trying to figure out what I wanted to do. It was either the university route or something else, and I actually almost accidentally joined the Air Force with a friend of mine who I was in school with. He wanted to, Christian Lacey, so if he is watching this, he'll know what I'm talking about. But we were in town one day and he wanted to jump into the careers office, and I just was with him, so I went in and started talking to one of the guys in there, and they just started asking me what I was into. And at the time, my background to that point was all different sports, but mainly gymnastics being the main one, where I sort of competed at high level, but the problem is with gymnastics, you can never make any money out of it, so it wasn't an option long term. So I started chatting to him, and he asked me then what stuff I was into, and have I ever heard of joining as a PTI, and I didn't even know what that stood for, which means physical training instructor. So he told me about the job. It made complete sense to me. I was like, how can someone get paid for doing that? He gave me a DVD. I went home, watched the DVD, and it was almost like just written for me. Like my dream job was there. So I had to go through a selection interview then at the careers office. You had to go through some fitness assessments, which weren't really anything too crazy. And then I went up to Cosford, which is near Wolverhampton, for a 3-day vetting, where you went through leadership tasks, fitness assessments. You have to give presentations on why you want to join the Air Force. With most trades, you don't have to do that part, but the Air Force is the only, for those that are looking to join the military, the Air Force is the only service you can actually join as a physical training instructor. The Army and Navy, you have to join as something else first, and then you can transfer into the PT corps from there. But I was only like 17 and a half at the time. I was literally on the brisk of being able to join, and it was really, really hard to get in. I think it still is really.
I was going to say, it's hard to get into the RAF, isn't it? Apparently, or is it?
It isn't, isn't it? It all depends on what the recruitment's like at the time.
Okay.
But there's different selection processes for different jobs.
Okay.
But anyway, I sort of 3 months later, I was there. I never used to have my hair shaved then, so my head was shaved, and I was like, oh shit, what's happened here? So yeah, I was in the Air Force. I went through 9 weeks of basic training. Then I did a PTI course for a year, which was awesome because I was just getting paid to. Even though it was quite intense, the whole course, it wasn't just doing fitness all day. We were learning about the fitness, so it's basically like when you finish it, you qualified you get civilian qualifications in level 3 PT and like spin instructor, all the usual stuff. But it was great, and the lifestyle that came out of that was awesome as well. I got to travel. I didn't have very much outgoings. I was on a good wage for someone at that age.
Yeah.
I sort of made the most of it really. So I got posted back down to Aylesbury, where I was a recruit training instructor, and then I eventually transferred. You have to specialise of 1 or 3 things as a PTI. You can either be a adventure training instructor, which I'm sure is something you would enjoy more.
Yeah, it sounds like something I'd enjoy.
But it's the same again. You look at that and you're like, shit, someone actually gets paid a decent wage to do that.
Yeah.
And because everybody used to like joke out on me when I used to tell them what I did, they're like, you're in the fucking Air Force. You've got this sort of jolly thing going on, but you can be an exercise rehabilitation instructor, which is, at the time when I was going through, more working with people or amputees who have come back from Afghanistan or whatever it may be, and rehabilitating them back into normal life, and if they were staying in the service. And then the last one, which I chose, was parachute instructor, which is military parachuting, which is slightly different. because the whole purpose of it is, or there's different purposes, but it's mainly insertion into some sort of environment. There's different levels to that, so it takes about 6 years to get fully qualified. You go through initially teaching low-level parachuting, which is parachute regiment, where like you jump. There's loads of people jump out very low level in a round canopy.
Right.
There's not a lot of skill involved in that. You literally just jump out and you hit the floor 30 seconds later. So it's not so much to teach there. But then as you go through and get a bit more experience with your jumps, you then get more qualifications in skydiving, then into high altitude parachuting, all the way to jumping 25,000 feet with oxygen, Bergens, weapons, big sort of barrels running off the back of C-130s.
What's that like actually? You see that in films, don't you? You see it in, any all these different war films where you're jumping off the back with a load of different people, like flying through the air. Like what's is there a buzz to that? Do you know what I mean? What do you feel like just before you do that? Is everyone kind of high spirit or whatever?
Yeah, it's I mean, the majority of I'm very fortunate to be in that position, but I'm a massive fan of thinking everyone makes where they are. Like you are where you are because of what your decisions which you've made. But I've just been presented with some really good ones and I've just taken them. So a lot of the work is done in like sunnier climates than the UK. So a lot of time training was spent in California. So I spent a lot of time out there where you do the high altitude stuff because you're guaranteed to be able to jump an aircraft, go to 25,000 feet, jump out, do it again 3 hours later, and so on. But like you see it in the movies, and it's not that far off. Apart from there's so many different procedures of checks and, for instance, like from doing a parachute brief where I would brief the parachutist what they're doing, where they're going to get released, where they're going, because this would be done at night as well. So you'd have MVGs on, because obviously if you're coming in the middle of the day somewhere, people can see you coming in, which defeats the whole purpose of the parachute insert.
What's an MPG you said?
MVG, so night vision goggles.
Right, okay, right.
And they have like sort of sat navs, which are on the front, because you jump in. You can jump from 60 kilometers away from where you want to land, so no one can hear a plane coming either. So if you think of it, we could get released Bridgend way and actually land on the beach here.
Really?
Yeah. If you did like a static line, so you jump out the plane and it opens, and then you just literally at the canopy. But in the UK, when you do that, it's fucking freezing. Really cold. And there's a lot of cloud base, so you just see a lot of clouds. But when you're in America, in fact, like we were discussing it earlier on, like around here, I've jumped onto the beach here on one of the air shows, and you see everything from a complete different point of view, literally. And it's quite mind blowing. But I think it becomes to answer your question, it just becomes the norm almost, and you just get bored with the procedures that you have to do to get to it. And then the jumping out bit, that's the bit that you love. And I transitioned from that onto a display team where there was a team of 8 of us, and we would sort of climb out of a small plane, get in a position, we'd have smokes on, like you see at air shows really, and you get released, then you sort of do formation skydiving, and you have a stack of parachutes, and you're hopefully all coming down land where you need to land. Because if you don't, then it's all over the newspaper. But I think as you progress through that sort of profession anyway, it gets a little bit riskier as you go up, so it sort of keeps you like switched on with it.
Well, we talked about this briefly, didn't we, just before we started the podcast, the wing suits, like the squirrel suit things. So like obviously you mentioned, is it 3,000 base jumps you've got to do or something before you can train for that, or is it?
It depends. If you're jumping from a plane and there's no land around that you can hit. I can't remember what the jump numbers are exactly. It's been a long time since I did it, but if you want to jump off a cliff and go and do it, unless you do it legally, it's you need to have a lot of jumps, and it's even like I wouldn't do it, and I've done just over 1,000 jumps, and there's not a chance you get me to do that. Just
for the people watching and listening, that's over 1,000 jumps out of airplanes. Over 1,000. It's crazy.
We did. I always bring this one up, no matter who I'm talking to, and I always, like I said, I would when we did it, but the first public display I did when I got onto the Falcons was we jumped into Buckingham Palace Gardens. And we're the only parachute team to ever do it, and there's nothing ever planned, because the organisation for that to happen, to have a Chinook fly over London in that airspace at that time at 3,000 feet for the weather to be right, everything to come together at the right time was, I don't even know how we did it.
Yeah.
And if you didn't land where we meant to land, it was quite windy, you're in the Thames or somewhere else. So it's they're the bit where it gets a bit more nerve-wracking, where you're in front of the public here, and if you don't land where you need to land, it gets a bit harder. But yeah, I did that for 6 years then. The last year, or last 2 years I was in, I opened up a gym on the side, which was called BZM Box.
Right.
I was sort of heavily into CrossFit at the time. I competed a bit, and I thought I just loved it, and I'd done fitness my whole life. I teach fitness. I taught fitness in the Air Force, and there was a lot more. Like I wanted my own gym. Even when I was a kid, I wanted that when I was younger. And if something, so an opportunity came up. I sort of had a couple of partners in the Air Force with me that did it, and my girlfriend at the time, who's my fiance now, Bex, she moved up from Southampton. We actually met in a CrossFit comp, as sad as it is. And she sort of run the gym full time. And because I was away a lot of the time, that's the nature of my job. It just become less of a joy and more of a chore. Because when I said I was leaving, a lot of people back home would be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, the pictures look great on, and I think it's the same with Instagram. And no one puts bad pictures on Instagram, really. And that's half the problem. They don't see some of the bullshit which you might have to put up with, procedures in place, and just living out of a bag, which when I was single, it was easy to do, with no one relied on me. But when you then open a business up and you have a fiance, and you're sort of leaving her to run the business, it's not fair, really, then. But that's where like my passion came back for making people sort of healthier and happier in that way. And there was just more incentive in it. I got to the point in the Air Force, I did 12 years, and when you start getting promoted to a bit of a higher level, there's more responsibilities, but again, more crap that you've got to put up with, and it's just frustrating. And if someone asks me to do something, I always ask why, and have a think of, is there a better way to do it? Not to be rude or anything, but just so I understand it, because everyone thinks differently. That doesn't go down too well in the military. Like,
yeah, I can imagine this. I think any organisation that people work for, like if somebody's a creative thinker or creative individual, they don't bode well in any organisation. I think because like you said, they're always trying to do something slightly differently. I didn't do well in Swansea University because it's typically an older organisation. Things are done a particular way, and you can't. And again, this comes down to entrepreneurship. When like you're trying to set up a business, that's what my job was in Swansea Uni. You're trying to help people to set up businesses, but you're not allowed to be too creative yourself. It's not really. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not going to be. It's not going to work.
Leading by example there.
You're not leading by example, So I can relate to that.
And it's the same in any sort of big organisation where there's been people in place for so long, they just don't want change because it may mean that they have to do a little bit more work, or it just change is different and they don't like it. Where things, I always look at things and think, how can I make it better, or how can I make it easier to do? And it may take a little bit of work in the initial phases, but the ultimate goal is to make it easier. And a lot of people in bigger organisations, you find it hard to do that. So when I opened the business on the side with my partners, I seen like we had free reign of that. If it fucked up, it was our fault, and we learned by that mistake and go. And I would happily put my hands up and say that didn't go quite well. And I think that's what you have to learn, unless you go down the road of getting a mentor or a coach, which I wish I did earlier, because I made all the wrong mistakes and paid for it, really. But I knew that once I had a taste for that, that's what I wanted to do. But I knew it wasn't going to be easy at all. So Bex, she's from Southampton. She'd obviously been down to Swansea, and like the discussion we had, you don't realise how great this place is until you move away. No, it is. It's, like, I think there's a lot of students and stuff like that that stay around, isn't it? Like football players as well. I mean, a lot of them, they stay down here because it is such a lovely place. You know, it's. I think a lot of people got a love-hate relationship with Swansea. I think there's a love-hate relationship. It depends on what your background is and what you do in Swansea, like the people you associate with. We talked about that just before, didn't we? It does. I think if you're associated with a lot of the time with people who maybe just aren't on your wavelength, you know, you're always, no matter where you are in the world, you're always going to be slightly unhappy with, and think you need to make a change. But sometimes it's just changing the social circles, isn't it? Yeah, completely. I mean, when I first moved away, I moved to Aylesbury, and that's the most landlocked area in the UK. So you go from like looking at that to you have to drive 3 hours to see a beach. And it's little things which you like. I always thought something missing, and it was just things like seagulls making noises and stuff, which I've been used to my whole life. And they make a massive difference, really. But yeah, you're right. That definitely, like, the people you surround yourself with can help with where you want to go with stuff as well.
Sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say, so living in California, so how long were you there altogether? You did say earlier on things.
It was intermittent, really. We do like 6 weeks out there on a training camp. It was mainly in the winter times because weather's not great here. So we would go out prior to Christmas for 6 weeks. Then we would come back for 3 weeks, and we'd go back out for another 6 to 8 weeks, and then come back. But then there was exercises all over the place, so you'd always literally be on a call or just living out of a bag. You didn't know where you were going to go. But California was a great experience. But like I said to you, when the sun's out here, there is no difference.
Yeah, that's why I asked you, because I was going to say from what you see in photos of California, I haven't been myself, but like what you see of the photos and things like that, it does look very similar to like Langland, for example. So Langland Bay, when the sun's rising, for example, over the Caswell when the sun's setting, you couldn't tell any difference. So that's it. Well, other than the actual temperature, I'm guessing probably typically a lot hotter out there.
I think it's just consistent, and you can tell like how humans behave. Everyone's really happy out there, but why is that? And that's mainly because the weather's good, so they're getting their source of vitamin D all the time, and they're active because they're outside. And you just can see it in a society, like how that changes people. Yeah. Whereas, like, I know here it's very intermittent, so it can be hard to sort of get motivated at certain parts of the year.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that brings me up to one of the questions I wanted to ask you. So vitamin D, okay, vitamin D. What? Obviously, typically we don't get a massive amount of it in the UK, but obviously we know it plays a massive role in generalised health. But I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about more about that, really, and get a bit of an insight into vitamin D. So if people aren't able to get sunshine as often, if they're working in an office or whatever, they're not able to get it. In terms of supplementation for it, like what's your thoughts around it, or what do you also what are the kind of the benefits that are not either purported or scientifically backed for getting the right doses of vitamin D? Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, the question when it comes to fitness, health, and lifestyle in general, and prescriptions within it, it's hard. The answer is always it depends, because it depends on the individual, what they live in, what they've got access to, what their sort of mindset's like, it's the psychology of the individual. But what I would say as a recommendation would be, ideally, if you can get 20 to 30 minutes minimum of sunlight exposure to 50% of your skin, so that would mean like top off or bikini or wherever that may be, that would be adequate. But we haven't got a choice with that sometimes, and you can get it through cloud cover. It's just no one wants to walk around with the top off in the shade. So in that case, the same as anything, if you're deficient in something, you may have to supplement it, but it's better to supplement it than to be deficient within it. So I mean, I wouldn't go too far in depth with what's the perfect one for me, just as long as you are, like I get it off Amazon, just a high dose of vitamin D, and like in the summer, if I can get out in it, I don't take it. If it's in the winter, but you will really feel a difference, but in loads of different things. Obviously when everyone is a bit browner, they feel a bit better, their confidence is up. But just general, like, it's good for bone health, like immunity, and just general, like, everything really. Immune system as well. Immune system. That's why most people, you very rarely become ill during the summertime because of the exposure which you're getting if you are out in it. But it also, you've got to look at the individual and what they do for a living. So are you stuck in an office all day, not like getting any light exposure? Are you a tradesman out in it all day? There's loads of different variables to it. So, but
because they talk about so you've got the vitamin D from the sun, but you also got the lux from the sun, haven't you? So just the light exposure. So I looked into this a little bit last year. Because when I was working in the office, through the winter and stuff like that, I know it was a noticeable change in my mood. So I was like, I started to supplement it with vitamin D, but I also started getting. I got one of those sand lamps, the Lux lamp thing. Are you? What's your thoughts on those?
Yeah, they work. I mean, I'm sure you, because I've shared a couple of things. A guy called Dr. Huberman Huberman lads. He's a scientist which specifically studies in blue light or sunlight exposure. And when we sort of go down that road, that is more like talking about circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
And circadian rhythm is pretty much when we should sleep and when we should be awake, and it should be in correlation with the sun and the moon as they go around. This is why if I ever get a client who does night shifts, my first question is, what's your plan to get out of night shifts? Because there's no way of supplementing or doing anything, because our hormones regulate with that. And two specifically, which are not ghrelin, cortisol and melatonin. So cortisol is a stress hormone, and I know everyone says stress is bad, but it's a certain amount of stress we need, because we haven't achieved anything, we don't have any purpose or anything like that, but we need stress to adapt to it, because problems with human beings, it's an amazing thing, but it's a problem as well, is we're complex adaptives, and all that means is whatever stimulus we put on ourselves, we adapt to it. Now if I eat KFC every day, don't get any sunlight and don't move at all, my body will adapt to it, and then my brain's going to follow it, and my feelings and my mood and all that. If I have good lifestyle practices, which we'll go through in a second, and this doesn't mean you have to train every day, like do some resistance training, you're walking, you're getting sunlight exposure, you chew your food properly, you drink adequate amount of water,
and you don't drink beer on Thursday
and you don't
afternoons.
drink beer on a Tuesday afternoon. That's what we want, and then that goes into getting sleep, because I'm a massive sleep geek. Like if you speak to my missus, she'll say every night I got blue light blocking glasses on, which are orange. So I look like Elton John sitting there.
I've got the red ones.
Oh, have you? Yeah,
the red ones.
But like those, the reason why they are orange is because it mimics the so like orange, the sun going down, and maybe like a campfire, because that's all we would have available to us. You're made up the same as human beings were 5 million years ago. In the last 100 years, in the last 5 years, our environment has completely changed. So we're not adapted to be in this. So we need to like sort of still stick to the basics, where people think that I'll jump that bit and go to this, where they're really, really important. Behaviour is important in any nutrition practice you can do. Once you get those things right, you're laughing.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because this is something I always talk about as well, really. But with the sort of sun going down, like the last year, I've been trying to do get in accordance with the sun, in terms of like exposure. So when they're like all my devices, my laptop, my phone, they go orange as the sun goes down. If I'm on my phone just before I go to bed, I got those red light blocking glasses on. I've got the brightness all the way down on my phone. And generally, as soon as I put those red light glasses on, within about 20 minutes, like something I always do, quite habitual, before I go to bed, I play chess on my phone around the app. When I got the red light glasses on, I got the yellow tint on the phone and the brightness all the way down. I nod off and go into a really deep sleep, within 10-15 minutes or something like that. I'm literally dribbling, do you know what I mean? It knocks me clean out. I can't emphasize enough. If anyone's like, I don't know, they're on a computer a lot, so I've got a friend who does graphic design. He needs the screen to be like bright white, essentially. I can't have a filter on and stuff, but he typically work later into the night. The sleep, it might seem like you might have getting 4 hours or 6 hours sleep or 7 hours sleep, but generally it's probably going to be a lighter sleep, and it's not going to be restorative.
That's the thing. It's not just getting the right amount; it's the quality of sleep that counts massively. But this is, and what I try to do, not in a nasty way, but frighten people a little bit, give them some scarcity. So like this is important, not in the next year, but this dictates when your sort of life is going to end, really. And we all have this biological clock which is going on, and you can turn that to go quicker or slower. And the way you do that is through practicing good lifestyle habits. Now, if you want to age rapidly, biologically, obviously time's time, it's not going to change. But if you want to biologically age rapidly, the best way to go about that is not getting good quality sleep and not enough of it. But when we talk about sleep coaching, because this is normally the way I look at approaches with different clients, is if we took everything away from you, what would you die of first? And I think first thing would be water. The second thing would be is if you were in Antarctica in the summer where there's no light, so you didn't sleep, you weren't allowed to sleep, you would die of sleep before you would die of loss of food.
Really?
Yeah, it would take you 3 weeks to die of not having any food whatsoever. I mean, I don't want to go too in depth of like what goes on within the body once you start getting lack of food and in fasted states.
Yeah.
But lack of sleep, like that's why they have the world record of not getting of staying awake the longest is like, I think it's like 8 days or something.
Yeah.
But it's like you got to knock it on the head then, because like you're literally going to die. It's like just running a battery constantly and never taking it off. And as soon as the battery runs out, that's death.
Yeah.
Not that anyone actually does that, but
Yeah.
I mean, I look back to my younger years not that I'm saying I'm old at all, but like during my early 20s and mid 20s, I was living this sort of different lifestyle to what my friends back home were almost. Like I was traveling a lot. There's a big drinking culture in the Air Force. So thinking back now, some of my sleep practices then were awful. And the biggest thing that you'll find is cognitive dysfunction. Your brain literally doesn't work the same. And when you go out on the lash, and I'm not saying like I still drink, I still do everything, I still sometimes get drunk, but just I don't do it as often now because of my responsibilities are a lot more. And I just can't perform properly mentally more than anything else.
I'm exactly the same. I've said that, right? So since I quit the job for the university, back last year, I started working with people. I was working with people anyway, but because I was doing it in a university setting, I was doing it for someone else. Like I didn't really believe in the job or whatever. Whereas now doing it with clients as I am now, I've noticed it. If I go out and I have a couple, like two beers, if I have 2 beers, I wake up the next day and I'm not 100%, and I know that. And essentially, when we're working with people, they're paying for a slight little slice of you, a little chunk of you. And if you're not able to give them that kind of the service they need, the person they bought into, it's different, isn't it? When you're doing that, you have got to figure out is it really worthwhile? Are you getting anything from
exactly,
it?
like what's the return on it? And I was in a really bad habit. I was in a habit like literally for 10 years straight. I would, the same as most people, I would get to Friday, have a couple of beers Friday, which would roll into Saturday, and like pull not an all-nighter, but you'd stay up like stupid o'clock and like have the crazy nights. And I did that, and like now I've sort of done it. I've dealt with that. Like I don't ever have to. I'm definitely not gonna have a midlife crisis and go back to 100%. But if you look at the reasons why you feel like that, the main thing is not so much the alcohol. Because the way your body metabolizes it, like alcohol has calories as well within it, which people don't realize. It's actually a macronutrient. So you've got protein, which everyone knows about, carbohydrates and fats, but alcohol is the 4th macronutrient.
Right.
But the problem is your body can't do anything with it. It sees it as this sort of toxin. So it does everything it can just to metabolize and get out the system before it can deal with anything else. So if you have, a lot of people say, I'm going to have a nightcap, have one of these. Yeah, you might get off to sleep, but you're not actually getting sleep, it's sedation. So alcohol will sedate you. So if you have a skinful and you go to bed, even on a normal time, you're not getting any sleep cycles whatsoever. So when you wake up in the morning, the majority, what we call a hangover, the majority of that discomfort is the lack of sleep. Like just pull an all-nighter without any drink and just see how you feel the next day. It's very similar.
Do you know what, that makes sense, right? Because I've noticed that. Like I said, what I always say to people is like, I had a few beers last night, but to be fair, I was like, I didn't go to bed till 2 o'clock, so it's the sleep that's got me. And I say that, but I didn't really, I never thought about it in that sense, that it's sedation and that it's actually, I knew it did affect the quality of sleep. Because I was watching something, there was a study where a guy, he stayed in like a particular controlled environment for like 3-4 days or whatever, and I think he would have whiskey, like a glass of whiskey or something before bed, and I think the REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep, as well as the deep quality sleep, I think it dropped quite significantly to near enough nothing. It was, I think he dropped off quicker. I think he dropped off the sleep quicker, but the actual quality of the sleep and also the consistency of it. So he was waking up, every couple of hours. It had dropped quite significantly just from that one glass.
Yeah, I mean, like with sleep, the negative parts of it is it's massive. Where people just think, and the term that I always hear a lot of entrepreneurs say anyway is, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." You're just bringing that day closer to you every time you say that. But like things which you can put in place, it's just looking at your habits really, and your habits make up everything in life. But when you look at when we go to bed, and I whenever I get a new client and I'll discuss what we sort of in plans to place for baseline fitness in a second, because what I've tried to do is everything that I do with individual clients, how do I do that on a group environment? So it's taken a year of COVID for me to have the time to really think of how we actually implement that. But when we talk about sleep, I always go through like 4 ways of helping you get to sleep really, or that will assist with it. One is sort of having a wind down routine, and the best way to do this is having some structure, and your body and subconscious loves rhythm. And if you're someone, like this is why people who are on night shifts and then coming off night shifts, their hormones are all over the shop. Like if we have a lack of sleep one night, your ghrelin level, so your hunger hormone is raised, so it's elevated.
Right.
Even though it would be, you've eaten the same as you would any other day, you just feel hungrier. Because
you need, it's crying out for some sort of sustenance, is it? Or
not really, like your body is not, unless you're physically doing something, but other than that, just the hormones elevated anyway. But like I said, the 2 hormones which, when we talk about circadian rhythm, is melatonin and cortisol. If you can imagine, there was no man-made light in. Like, and the example I always give is, remember if you went camping, hopefully everyone's been camping, and maybe kids these days don't do it anymore, but even when they do, they've got a screen.
I fucking love camping.
But when you went camping, everyone would be in bed by 8 o'clock, because what light exposure do you have? So all that is, everyone's tired, because, unless you're on the lash, but everyone's tired, so cortisol levels drop because the sun's gone down, and your melatonin levels just go through the roof, so your brain's getting flooded with this melatonin. It's like, we'll go to bed, as I said, unless you're on the beers. But we don't have that these days. So what do we put in place to mimic what's going on with the sun and the moon? And I always go with clients off a 10-3-2-1-0 rule. Okay. So first of all, if you want to become a morning person, you have to start organising yourself to be that morning person. So 0 will work backwards, is the amount of times you press snooze in the morning, because that doesn't help at all. And you go back to minimum of 7 hours, 7 to 9. Different people need different amount of hours. Again, it's down to the individual, and you've just got to trial and error, just be consistent, see how you feel, which will bring you to a bedtime. Now, you know when you go to bed, you don't just go to sleep. It should take you 15 minutes. If it's literally, you hit the bed and you're out, then you're probably undernourished, or you're doing too much activity, or stressed out a bit too much in the day. Then working back from that, 1 hour before you go to bed, we ideally don't want to be having any blue light exposure. Ideally longer than that, but we're all addicted to your phone. I do it as well. And that's why I got glasses, because sometimes I'm still, like, my biggest thing is stop working. But that's one of my struggles, is 2 hours before you go to bed, it's no more work to stop you thinking about it. And especially when we talk about business owners, what I went through is I was hitting, my head would hit the pillow and my brain's on fire. I can't switch off. So 2 hours before you go to bed, no more work. 3 hours before you go to bed, no more big meals. I'm not saying don't eat, but no more big meals, because all that means is when you go to bed, your body's working to digest food where it wants to be relaxed. And then 10 hours before you go to bed, no stimulants or caffeine or anything, ideally, because it takes 8 to 12 hours to metabolize caffeine. So I try and knock coffee on the head like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which I used to be one of those people saying, I can drink a coffee and go to bed. I could, but the quality of sleep wasn't there. And like, just to go into what sleep cycles are, a sleep cycle is made up of 5 parts if you want, and we should get 4 to 5 cycles every night. So this is where the undisturbed 7 to 8 to 9 hours comes into place. And each cycle, on average, is about 90 minutes. So as you go into it, you go into stage 1, which is you drifting off. Stage 2, where brainwaves start to slow down and we start getting into sort of a dreaming sort of phase. Stage 3 and 4 is when we're in deep sleep, and that's our main physical restorative process, where all the damage we've done to ourselves physically gets repaired then. So if you're someone who's trying to put on muscle, I know we had a discussion earlier on about some people who find that hard. If you are not getting enough 3 and 4 stage of your sleep cycle, you're not going to grow. You're not going to repair your muscle. It's not going to happen. And then when you go into REM sleep, which you said, which is rapid eye movement sleep, that is where all our sort of psychological sort of repair and memory function
That's it.
gets
Yeah,
sort of,
short-term memories turn into long-term memories
Yeah.
and stuff like that, isn't it?
yeah.
You no doubt you've seen this. Is Matthew Walker?
Yeah,
Sleep is your
I
superpower.
read the book is
I haven't read the book actually, but to be honest, the TED Talks scared the shit out of me.
he's the first person I came across that got me like, shit, I need to look at this.
Yeah.
Because even though I had practiced, like I always deemed myself as healthy, even though at the time I was drinking on weekends, which is like people can do it. It's just like everything in moderation.
Yeah.
But like I would just train my tits off and like diet. I wouldn't really like looking at it that much as long as I thought, oh yeah, I'm eating very relatively healthy. But even when we talk about health, like athletes aren't healthy. Like when we talk about longevity of life, when you like I get a client in and we talk about what the goal is, and we have an agreement on its health, then you're not going to be in the gym 6 days a week. We're going to be getting the minimal effective dose and working on your lifestyle and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas people in the fitness industry is awful for it, especially Instagram. Is everyone's like shredded and it's not healthy to be a low body fat percentage. You ask any bodybuilder how they feel when they're on stage, and they'll tell you if it wasn't for the adrenaline, fucked.
Yeah. I've spoke to a few people who've said that pretty much. Like they've said it's probably one of the most unhealthy stages that they go through, because obviously you're depleting your body of water, you're depleting your body of carbohydrates. Probably know a lot more about this than me, but you're getting everything out of your system. So it's literally just skin and bones, realistically, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I could never. But then again, it's not that something that I wanted to do. Do you know what I mean? But I'm a nightmare for, like, if I love a donut. I love a donut. Somebody offers me a cookie, I'm not turning the cookie down.
Yeah.
I'm that person. I've been quite fortunate, like genetics wise. Again, we talked about this, but I've been quite fortunate genetic wise, where I can eat generally a lot of stuff, and because my activity levels are quite high, and metabolic rate is quite high, I don't really fluctuate weight.
Yeah.
It kind of stays pretty much the same. So my diet, I'll be honest, is terrible. But I've been quite fortunate that I haven't needed to watch it as much in terms of weight management.
Yeah.
In terms of health, different story. Do you know what I mean? Because it's still going somewhere. It's still going to have some sort of long-term effect. But yeah.
I'm very similar. I can't turn down a pastry. If you ask anyone, if there's an almond croissant I'm kicking about, it's mine. But like as I said, we can have everything in
Moderation.
In moderation, really. And a lot of people, especially if we had a discussion about fat loss, because that's what ultimately everyone wants. I think firstly, we briefly spoke about this. When you talk to someone about their goals, and they say, right, I want to be like all the bros want to be shredded, and the girls just want this Instagram thing. Firstly, you gotta assess the individual and just see how they actually talk to themselves. Because I've seen people who are shredded who aren't happy with how they look.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I could be a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then I've seen people really overweight who like look at someone and go, I wish I was that. But then when you get there, you have to the way you're programmed, you have to be happy with yourself. But what I'm not against, or what I am against, is this. I can't remember what it's called. This it's not love yourself movement.
I think I know what the concept of what you mean. Is it it's okay to be
obese
and things like that, right? I find it I've said this to somebody the other day. It's okay not to be okay that people say, and I get where people are coming from when they say that, but I said, right, okay, so it's like, it's not okay to be not okay. It's normal, but it's not okay, because it's kind of like, it's almost giving people the thing to be like, right, you know what, if I'm feeling a bit shit right now, it's okay, it's fine to do that. It's normal, but to stay in that position, then it's not good, because you can go slope further down and things. It's something that, if you're in a shit place mentally or shit place physically, it's good to want to get out of that sort of situation and go, right, you know what, it's normal because other people have been here, but I don't want to stay here, and I think it prompts a response then, isn't it? Rather than just
I think
allowing
all
it
that
to
is doing is allowing people to accept how they feel, and that it is other people are doing the same thing. But then, like, how do I get help with this? And this is why I love coaching, is because I have coaches, not necessarily in fitness, but in business, or I need to learn how to sell things, or I need to know how to market things, or I need to know how to coach something else. I tried the route of doing it on my own, and you may get there, but it'll take you God knows how much longer, and a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can get a mentor of some sort, or a coach, or whatever it may be, it doesn't mean you're weak in something. Like, if you look at like top entrepreneurs in history, like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, they still have coaches to this day, performance coaches.
Yeah.
And as a coach, you don't necessarily have to be better at that individual or what they're trying to get better at, because you've got all the answers of where you want to go. The coach gets it out of you through conversation.
That's right enough. Like, you've got people who are, they've got all the answers themselves, haven't they, realistically? I think this is the thing when it comes to coaching, is that one of the key things I always say to people when I work with them is, you don't need my help. You don't need it. I'm willing to give it to you, and I'm going to help you to get to this stage, but you are the person who's going to actually walk that road, and you've got it all inside you in the first place. And I think it's just helping people to sometimes realise that. But also then you've got the giving them the different perspective, isn't it? Because that's like when you're caught up on what you're doing, sometimes it's easy to not see the clear picture right in front of you. And sometimes then if you're a coach, they can kind of go, hang on, have you thought about this? Or what about this? And then you kind of go, actually, do you know what? They're right, and I think it's just giving that extra perspective.
Yeah, that perspective, but also calling you out on your bullshit sometimes, which I think a lot of people do need accountability within things, which does help. So like, this is where the language around what is a coach is very grey, but a lot of people are calling them coaches and they're not, especially online. It's like the fucking Wild West out there. Like, someone can do, especially like an online fitness coach, where a lot of time all they're doing is giving them a training program, which are given to everyone else. You see this with influencers all the time. They just do this, I do this, even though I fucking don't. Here's a meal plan. Now, that isn't teaching anyone anything. There's no accountability within that or anything. Like, a coach, in my eyes, looks at, they're going to help you with every aspect. Like, where do you want to go? Okay, well, these are the things you need to do to get there. I may not be able to help you with them, but I can give you the steer in the right direction. And that's what I do. Like, if something's out of my scope or what I understand how to get some better, I'll refer them to someone else. I'm like, well, that's a bit like far for what I need for what I can help you with. That's
the best thing you've got to do, isn't it? Some people, I'd imagine, I don't know anyone like this, but like, some coaches would probably go, right, I'm going to try and deal with everything myself here and whatever, and they try and take it on board, when in fact you've got to go, do you know what, this is out of my depth. You know what I mean? If it's let's just use a hypothetical example, someone who's really, really severe mental health, like anxiety and depression issues, as well as then like maybe mixing it up with substance misuse, and in a quite a chaotic way, they're coming to you for coaching. They're probably past that stage. They need to look at addressing the substance use, as well as then getting like counselling or psychotherapy or whatever, depending on the stage they're at. So they need that support, and then if they want additional stuff for coaching, that's kind of what I always say. I'll be like, look, I think with the stuff that you've just described to me, I can help with these aspects, confidence, etc., etc. These sorts of things, I can refer you to these people. I think that's hopefully, I'd like to think that most people do that. I don't know if they do.
I don't think they do.
No.
I think some people, like, their ego gets a little bit away, and I'll give you some prescription, and it can be quite dangerous depending on where the individual's at, really.
There's an example, actually. There's a guy, one of my mentors, so substance misuse qualifications and counselling qualifications and stuff that I done it with this guy, and he is like a registered psychotherapist himself. He's very, very influential up in like Newport, Blinding Way up there. So he's worked with all the substance use kind of organisations and things up there in quite high roles. But he got wind of somebody from another organisation, who one of the clients that he was involved with, but one of the clients had accessed a service somewhere else in the area, and one of the people that she was in a credit. She was a trained counsellor. So she quite young, but trained counsellor. She tried delivering a psychotherapy session with a client who, he'd been lucky enough. He was kind of sitting there like, what the fuck is this person talking about? Do you know what I mean? Because she was talking about like, she said something to the effect of like Freud, Sigmund Freud. The reason that you experience this and experiencing this is because of your relationship with your sexual relationship with your mother when you were a child, blah, blah, that kind of like that Freudian stuff. And he was like, the fuck is she talking about? But it's essentially she was trying to use like psychoanalytic therapy when she wasn't trained to, and obviously that can be very, very dangerous, especially if you're working with vulnerable people, because you're bringing up this stuff, deep-seated things. But he got wind of it. He actually got it like struck off and everything. Cause he said he was like, what she's done is so fucking dangerous. It's because he said if that person had been anywhere near suicidal, like it could have tipped them over the edge and stuff like that. So you have got to be very cautious with it.
Completely. I mean, I got so like one of the things which I'm sort of working on at the minute, or one of the things I've done in the past, is performance coaching with business owners and entrepreneurs, because a lot of people think that if they want to gain the health, like get the health sorted as a business person, right? How often do I need to go to the gym, watch late? Like, whoa, we're nowhere near there yet. Let's get you, like most business people, entrepreneurs, I know because I've been through it and I'm still going through it, and I deal with it as best as I can, is time management and just being organised the whole time and being able to switch off. So it's like things like that which starts, because stress has a huge effect on health. So I have a partner which I sort of do that with, Chris Davis, you know him. He's an NLP practitioner and like qualified in hypnotherapy, CBT, and timeline.
We've had Chris on the podcast as well.
Oh, have you?
Generally
you
listening, he's been on the podcast. I think it was like episode 4 or 5 actually. So yeah, people listening, if you look through YouTube, he's on there. Sorry.
Yeah, but so like the conversations I have with him and like some of the techniques he can use with people, I'm like, fucking hell, I didn't like. I'm so intrigued by it all. Like that's all I surround myself by, just because I'm interested in it. So I wouldn't like I could never put my hand up and say I'm qualified in that, but I understand what it does. But I would never. I'm not qualified to do it myself, so that's why I would like go, okay, you need to go and see this person. But I could try, but it's not going to fucking get anywhere.
No, 100%.
But I think that's what a lot of people do, especially in the fitness industry now. You can do a level 3 PT in, like, I don't even know, I've seen some advertised for like a week, like an intensive thing online, and you're a qualified instructor. Now a lot of people look at personal trainers and think they know exactly what they're talking about, and like honestly a lot of them don't, but a lot of them suffer with like confidence with what they're doing, because it's the same as any job. Like you qualify, same as driving, you qualify driving. You're not like, oh, just sitting back driving, shifting, like you're still like this when you're driving until skill becomes a subconscious habit. Like when like this morning I drove to the gym, I can't remember changing gears. I can't remember the drive myself. Because it's a subconscious habit now. And that happens with like a life of a coach, really. You go through this thing of like having what's it called, imposter syndrome. Like, do I know enough to do this? But what you try and do is overprescribe things with people, and it makes them confused, overwhelmed, and it's like it hits your confidence. So that's the sort of next thing which I've in the works at the minute, is helping personal trainers or coaches have systems in place to know that they can provide a good service, and also them ask the question, am I doing this right? Because you're sort of on your own. And most big gyms, unless you go to an independent gym, in independent gyms, I know there's a few around Swansea, there's loads more passion in there because it's an individual's place, there's a name on the door. Whereas big gyms like David Lloyd's, where most new PTs go to, there's no one who can really take you under their wing and go, look, this is the way we do this. There's no formal education, or most places I've seen there not is. Like in my gym, what we're going into is the instructors which we've got there, we meet every week. Like we're going to meet, once we open again, every week we're going to meet, and someone's going to do a presentation on sleep. So we all sit there, we all might know it, but it's a great refresher for everyone, and we're going to sit there, who's having trouble with clients? Me, my client isn't losing weight. Okay, well, are they doing this, this, and this? So we all learn off each other. I
love that. That's amazing, and that's work. That's the power of working together. I always say that, like working together, using it's a resource. You know, like it is a resource in itself when you have a group of people together with the amount of knowledge that everyone's got. Because, like, you know, the amount that I've learned now in this conversation already. You know, obviously there's things that I've taken away from that, but like, you know, you meet someone in the street, they can tell you something new, like, but that is, you know, going on a bit of a tangent, but that's essentially working together, isn't it? You're taking bits and bobs of info from everyone, but if you've got team meetings regular where you're doing that, you're getting that collective knowledge of everybody then to the same sort of level, and it works to improve the business overall then, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely. And like we want to, like, the service delivery is
Yeah.
the main thing, and that's where retention that comes into play. But I think it's just like, and I still learn off other like coaches all the time because of the experience that they have with clients, because every client's completely different, and I may not have had the type of client one of those has got. So then if I do get that type of person, I'm like, shit, what do I do here? Whereas if we all get together and go, I'm struggling with this, we all pitch our ideas in, that individual's not just getting coaching from that one coach.
It's the whole team.
It's the whole team, really.
Yeah.
Not that we would, like, it would be Dorothy from Penland it's anonymous, but like I've got a client who's doing this, and, and that's how we do it. So not as if like the clients think, oh, they're all talking about this, slagging me off. They're not doing what I tell them to do. So there's nothing like that. But yeah, I think coaching, no matter what type of coach you are, unless you're putting a minimum of 5 hours a week self-education, you're not going to get anywhere, really. At all. And
it's your duty to do that. I think when you become when you say the word coach, it comes down to teaching as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you're a teacher, if you're a coach, if you're somebody who's educating someone else in any way, shape or form, like it is pretty much your duty to ensure that you're moving forward yourself and kind of practicing what you preach in that regard. You know, that's something I'm always very conscious of. I'm kind of sitting there sometimes, I'm like, when's the last time I picked up a book? When's the last time I listened to an audiobook?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When is the last time I read a blog, opened an email from one of the subscribers I've got, and digested some of the information from that? What kind of new information have I found in the last week or so, which is relevant to what I'm doing? And that's pretty. I had that exact thought yesterday actually, because I thought I lent a book to somebody about a year ago. That's quite relevant to what I want to be doing now with one of the things. So I thought, right, I'm going to get that book back off them, and I'm going to make a start on the journey. So that was just from making that conscious, just bringing it back to the forefront of my mind that I need to educate myself a little bit more. But I think it is just, anybody should do it. I think anyone should try and educate themselves a little bit every single week, even if it's an hour or two, or just something that they enjoy, something they're interested in. So when people are lost in life, I think generally it's because they're not exploring things that they're interested in or passionate about. And again, like, if you ask somebody what they're interested or what they're passionate about, they might not be able to answer it in some cases. They might be like, oh, I don't really know. Like, I like fishing or whatever, but they might not be able to give you a really solid answer. Whereas if you said to somebody, like, what do you actually enjoy doing in your spare time that you really love, you'd do for free or whatever, or if somebody paid you to or if somebody was offering you a job that you'd snap it up type thing, like things like that. Sometimes I think they just need to explore new stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, just explore those interests. So to give a bit of context, surfing is one of the ones I talk about with people. I always wanted to try it. It was always something I fancied doing, but it was never something I thought, right, I can turn this into an income, I can turn it into an actual job. But then, I started going surfing. I met with a guy, I knew him anyway, but I met him down Carswell, coming out of the water. He said to me, I've seen what you're doing now, blah, blah, blah. It'd be good to run these particular workshops with you, surfing and, and group mindset stuff, etc., on confidence, resilience, etc. I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. And in my head, for a couple of weeks prior to that, I thought, you know what, I'd absolutely love to just, we're going to work with clients, take them out surfing, not coaching them on surfing, but just going out to the water and doing that sort of stuff with them. And then that opportunity has come up, and all of a sudden, even though I'm not coaching somebody on how to surf, because I can't fucking surf myself probably yet.
But that's instructive.
It's you turn this a passion or something you're interested into a passion, into something that's actually paying you a living, or potentially going to pay you at least some of it. And I just find that interesting because so many people go to university, going on a bit of a tangent here, they'll go to university to study something because they're looking at what job they can get at the end of it, forgetting that, have they actually got a passion for that particular thing, or is it, what is it that about that they enjoy? Does that make sense?
Yeah, really. I think what people, when you talk about depression, and again, this is like just what is thoughts that I've gathered, listen to people like Jordan Peterson. So he talks a lot about people who are suffering from depression. It could be loads of different things, but one of the main issues is they have a lack of purpose. And as human beings, we need to have purpose in something.
100%.
And to have purpose, we have to go through some form of challenges to grow. So if we're not challenging ourselves, and that doesn't have to be physically, that can be mentally, it could be reading a book. Like when I was in school, I was dyslexic, so I wasn't very good at reading at all. Like, so I found it challenging, like, to self-educate myself, and over time I've learned how to become this new person, and the way I talk to myself. Like, I read a book every month. It's just like, you have to challenge yourself and have that purpose in what you're doing. And this is where I think a lot of society, people go, right, I leave school, and I know this is talked about all the time, I'll leave school, I'll get a job in this place and I'll stay there. Like, once you learn that new job, it's like, yeah, great, cool, then the next thing that happens, I'll get a family, so that's something new. But then this is where, like, sort of midlife crises start happening, where it's like, shit, I don't feel like I've got any purpose anymore, because I can do my job with my eyes closed. And I think that's why a lot of people end up, not a lot of people, because a lot of people don't do it and go after what they want, because they're scared then from being out of this comfort zone. Whereas if you're someone who is constantly going out of that comfort zone, not taking stupid risks, I mean, like, sometimes they pay off a lot, like sometimes they don't. But unless you're challenging yourself every day, you're never going to grow, and eventually you're going to not feel great about yourself. But I think going back to the education thing, I did this as well, where I was literally reading everything I could on everything, and thought, great, and then I wasn't putting it into practice. So I wasn't using it with clients, because it was just like, right, what's the next thing I can learn about? Yeah,
it's too much information.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, because we did talk about it a little bit earlier before the podcast, didn't we? And I know people that do this as well. I had a conversation with somebody quite recently about it, actually. I said, you know, I do think you're digesting too much information, because I think what it does, if you've got, it essentially comes down to clarity, doesn't it? I think if you've got clarity of your vision and about what you want to be doing, you know, let's say, for example, now with yourself, so you've got, you know, the lifestyle and performance coaching, and everything kind of feeds into that. You know, you've got clarity of the vision and the stuff that you want to be digesting. If there's something which is slightly outside of the remit of that, you kind of go, well, do I need to be digesting it or whatever? You know, you pretty much know. Sometimes it's just something you might be interested in outside of it, which is fine. But if you want to actually try and pursue a career or add that on, you know, as a little attachment, and it's completely outside of the remit of what you're doing, it's almost, you become divided. I think your attention becomes divided, and I realised that myself. I thought, well, what the fuck, what am I good at? You know, what am I good at? What do I love doing? I was like, right, well, I like helping people, I like educating people, I like bringing people together, and I like, you know, reconnecting people with the natural world.
Your zone of genius. Zone of genius, that's called. Like, if everyone pursues it, I can't remember the book, Take the Leap. That, like, if you read that book,
heard of this,
by Gay Hendricks, his name is, and it's all about finding your zone of genius, which then you do start doing something you enjoy and you're good at, which creates purpose within it, and this where people become really successful. Like Jeff Bezos is where he is because he's really fucking good at what he does. Like, he's not like, oh, I gotta go to fucking work today. He gets up and like, I've got to go and do this. I'm good at it. I love it. They don't see it as work, and I think that's what you found now. 100%. Is your zone of genius. And I know the word genius sounds like, I'm not fucking Einstein, but that doesn't mean that. It means just pursuing something which one you love, and there are always going to be these barriers which come up and go, or like limiting beliefs, which like, oh, I can't support my family doing that, or can't do this, and it might be a hard decision to make. But as long as if you do go for it and you are fully fucking committed, you can't half-ass things like that, but it will massively pay off. And like, I left the Air Force, I had like a great pay from there, I had hardly any outgoings, I just wasn't enjoying it much anymore. And this is when I said, people would say, mate, you jump out of fucking planes for a living. Like, but you only see that bit. Like, you don't see the other bits and the frustrations behind it, because there are more of that than the actual jumping out of the plane bit. But like, I got to the point where I was getting so frustrated, and I did, what's the personality test?
I know which one you're on.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's like you ask 100 questions, or you answer 100 questions. And honestly, but I'll message it to you.
I know which one you mean, because it's when if you're pragmatic, or if you're antagonist and stuff like that. Oh, it's going to do my head in. We can't look at the cameraman here. Do we know what that is?
Myers-Briggs.
That's the one, Myers-Briggs.
There we go.
Myers-Briggs. But I think everyone should do that, because when I did it, I read it and was like, fuck, that's me to a T. And the things that come up in it was like, doesn't deal with hierarchy very well. Is more of a consultant than a follower, and or coach, and it all came up, and I was like, that's what I enjoy doing. That's what I'm doing. So, I mean, as I said, I've made loads of mistakes. That's because I didn't ask for help from other people. So we moved from this thing of like being comfortable financially to literally dropping everything.
Yeah.
I convinced Bex to move to Swansea.
Yeah.
Even though she'd been down here, and like everyone who I brought down here, whether it be like out on Mine Street, like it was obviously quite famous, or just generally around, people are like, this place is unbelievable. And like it's the same as any city. There are shit places to every city, and you gotta understand that first.
Yeah.
But yeah, we moved down here with literally nothing, and this was only like 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, and we lived in my brother's garage, and my brother, I doubt he'd probably watch this.
Marcus.
Marcus. We turned up to his house, like I got all the wagons full of our shit from Oxford now, we've moved down, and he's meant to have this garage ready for us to live in.
Right.
It was still a fucking garage, still had the garage door on. So we had to live with my mother for a couple of months, and then while I converted the garage with my grandfather, he obviously helped out then, and we lived with him and his partner at the time for 4 months. Then we bought our place, which is on Trathloin Road, and we literally had the keys for our house on the Tuesday, which needed gutting, because I thought just biting off too much, I can chew. I thought we'll buy something which we can sort of gut and make it our own, and get a bit of up the value on it and return for it. But then we opened the gym on the Saturday, and like for anyone who's opened a gym or like run a gym, that they'll understand, because it's fucking carnage.
Yeah.
Pretty much the 3 months running up to that is just trying to get everything in place, equipment order, the like shop fitters coming in and actually doing the outfit of it. Because if you look at our gym, it was a warehouse before, and when people come through the door of it, what we've tried to do is create a boutique experience, but in a functional gym.
Yeah.
People literally walk through the door and go, fuck, because it's like a speakeasy pretty much. Yeah. But we opened that, and then we literally camped at our house for, I'm not even joking, about 8 months, because I'd be up at 5, we'd get to the gym, we would stay there till 9 at night, and it was like, initially it was weekends as well, and it was just straight, we'd go home and we were living in this, we didn't have a kitchen, for 2 years, didn't have a kitchen, but like we would follow in what we enjoyed, so it didn't feel like work. Now if I was working in Tesco's, which I have, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it would make that whole experience a lot harder to deal with, because I wasn't able to go back and do some work on it, and in fact initially I even actually got a job with the reservist at St Athens. So just because I sort of panicked about it, I was like, shit, we can't
all your eggs in one basket.
We can't afford like to live here like at the minute, because obviously when you open a business, money just doesn't come in.
No.
It's got to build over time, especially if it's a brick and mortar.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've got a premises as well,
exactly.
I've had it myself. You know what I mean? I've had a tattoo studio and a clothing store, and it's worrying, especially when you're like looking at the financial figures, and even though everything's looking really nice and fancy, you're kind of going, we need to get more members, we need to get more people in through the door. It's a scary time.
And at the same time, it's a massive learning curve, because back then I didn't really know much about marketing or anything like that. I thought you just, same as most gym owners probably think, you open the door, people turn up. Luckily, some people did.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus, but like thinking back now, I was like, thank God they turned up. But like I was travelling down to St Athens in the day to do some PTI work down there, with the Air Force and coming back, and then I thought, what the fuck am I doing? Like I want this business to grow and it to be better, and I'm fucking off somewhere else just to play it safe, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I sort of left that, and like the last year and a half, pretty much put everything into. I still sort of learn about like fitness stuff, nutrition stuff, but I had to put that on pretty much hold. I know enough to help people wherever they want to go with that, but the problem is with those sort of subjects, you can go so deep on it, and it's like it becomes overwhelming. And I posted something up the other day with the graph and the something Dunning effect. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like, say like you watch a Netflix documentary on a subject, you think you know fucking everything about it.
Yeah.
And then when you start reading into it, you realise, fuck, I actually don't know anything. And then it's over years and years and years it comes up. So I had to switch from learning stuff like that to how do I get the business to grow? Well, that's marketing, and like how do I market the place and all that sort of stuff. So that was a switch, but the more I got into that, I started to enjoy that a little bit more. So yeah, I think it's definitely people need to figure out what they want. I think people before they're 30 shouldn't know what they want to do.
No, I think it's perfectly normal, isn't it?
Completely.
Like you see these kind of, you see these, no, I don't call them, not memes. You know the posts on Insta, like, you know, the inspirational type ones, so it's you know, they give you, like, let's say Walt Disney, he was bankrupt at 40, or
KFC started when he was 70.
70, yeah, you know, not Bill Gates, what's his name, Steve Jobs kicked out of Apple at fucking 30 odd or whatever. Like, I do like those, because I think there's value in that, because it keeps people remembering that it is okay, it is pretty normal to not have your shit together, you know, at certain points during your life. It is normal to do that, but yeah, I think everybody expects that they're on the same timeline as their friends and stuff like that. Like some of the, you know, some of my mates now are buying houses, for example, right? They're buying houses, they've got the missus and all that kind of stuff. That's not what I want, you know, that's not my, that's not my metric for success, because for me, a house, you know, obviously it is a place to live, but for me right now, I'm like, I've got other ambitions. I don't want to be tied down and have that big outgoing and big expense and things like that. So it's kind of...
Well, let's talk about wealth. People think wealth is money all the time, and it's not necessarily. Like, I know people who've got lots of money and really unhappy, so I wouldn't say they're wealthy in that respect. Yeah. So it's hard, but I think there's certain people which will completely understand that, but more for the people who aren't sort of happy where they are, like, as long as they understand it's hard. That's the point of me.
Actually, I did, when I was talking about that, then I wandered off from what I was meant to say, but yeah, yeah, I was going to say, like, happiness, like, when it comes to the job I had when I was in Swansea Uni, I knew pretty much, I was like, right, I've got to get out here, I've got to drop it, I've got to go, but that came because I knew what I was passionate about. I think what the point I was going to make just now is, you know, I think people are a lot quick to rush and get, you know, the house and all these different things. There's nothing wrong with that, but you know, they're quick to do those things. But then, like you said, they have that point then at some point where they go, oh, shit, fuck, you know what, I don't really love what I'm doing here. But now I'm stuck in a position where they can't take similar risks to maybe what you have or what I have. But obviously, you said, but then you got the house. And you managed to make it work, and it's you were doing something you loved, and I think that's important. Is you know the feeling, don't you? You know the feeling when you're on that right path. Because I had businesses in the past where I was like, set it up, got it going, but I always had something on the side. You know, like you said, always had something on the side, and then with this, I didn't do that. I went, nah, fuck that. I'm like, this is 100% what I'm going to pursue. And it's worked out, but I think you know when that time is right.
Yeah, completely. And I think it's definitely like, if you go into business and like and this is not saying I'm massively successful at all, but like I know where I have clarity of what I need to do to get to where I want to be now, and it's taken a while for that to happen. And it's okay for, like, if you look at all these memes and stuff about like business owning or entrepreneurship, it's literally like this.
Oh yeah.
All the time. And like even when you get more success, those still happen. It's just all relative to where you are, really. It's just a compounded effect which goes on as you go along. But I think it's definitely you the best way to be is not so much one to be like a really hard worker, but being able to adapt. Like if you like this, look at COVID for example. It's like, how do you adapt to that situation with what's going on? You've got to.
Do you know what? I've said this as well. Like, I do not envy the guys who've got businesses, especially like yourself, with bricks and mortar, doing all of this. It's been such a challenging time, and you know, you've seen adaptability from a lot of people, which is amazing. Do you know what I mean? Like the guys, who was it? So like Hooga, for example. Hooga is a cafe and bar down in Bryn Mill. Like their adaptability, the first lockdown, what they did was great. You know, they converted it into a store. You know, so you could still go in, you could still get fresh bread and fresh groceries and all this different stuff and whatever. They changed the entire layout. Like you've seen that from a load of different businesses in general. They had a great adaptability. I think the second lockdown, people have just gone, fuck this. We're not going to bother. Like some have kept going, but I think some have gone, you know what, probably not worth it. We're just going to take the money and thing. But like yourself, now you haven't had a choice, have you? You know what I mean? No. Literally, it's not like you were able to serve takeaway food or whatever. You are literally like, they were like, God, now you can't open at all. I mean, what's that been like as a business owner?
It depends on the individual and like how you react to certain things. Like the way I look at it is, every situation that comes up is, can I do something about it? If the answer is yes, I'll do it.
Yeah.
If the answer is I cannot do anything about it, what are you going to get out of worrying about it or stressing about it? It's taken me ages to be able to do that. But because as soon as you go into this stress or fight or flight, then you're running off a different part of your brain. You're not thinking logically. You're thinking in your sort of monkey brain. If you ever read the Chimp Paradox,
I've got to write. It's mad you said this, right? So many people have recommended it to me. I bought it ages ago. It's been sitting on my shelf, and I looked at it the other day and I went, I still need to read that book, and I haven't read it yet.
Yes.
So carry on, maybe.
Well, talking about that, I think there's. I mean, the problem is you read a book and you're like, fuck, everyone should read that book. But ones that always stand out to me are ones which is psychology, because I think you need to understand yourself first before anything else.
Yeah.
And like I have to, I think everyone does. Chimp Paradox gives you an understanding of how your brain works. So you literally read it or listen on an audiobook, whatever it may be, and you're like, fuck, that's why I do that. Or that's why I react like that at that time. So not only does it give you an understanding of how you react, when you're in an argument with someone else, you're like, I know why you're reacting like that. So it's not like you argue back, because that ain't going to do nothing. So it gives you a greater understanding of how people react, what part of their brain they're working, because I don't want to go into too much in depth. We've got different compartments of your brain. Your prefrontal cortex, which is logically thinking. Like when you get all these sort of older people, and what age that is categorized in, I don't know, but they get annoyed with young individuals, like just doing stupid things. But humans don't get a fully developed prefrontal cortex till they're like 23, 24. That's why students and all that make stupid decisions, because they're not thinking logically. They're running off their chimp brain, and that's why it's called chimp paradox. So they run off emotions more than anything else, and then you get this other part of your brain, which is like the computer, which is all your stored stuff, so your subconscious, your habits and all that. And it really does teach you how to put the right storage in the right place, and when you are reacting like certain ways, like it makes you think like, am I reacting on emotions here, or am I thinking logically? And then another one to go with that is psychosomatics, is one that I've just finished reading now, and that is.
I seen you post about that.
Yeah.
It looks like a very intense book, because it's a pretty big book, isn't it? I think.
It is, but I think like, and this is coming from someone who in school was shit at reading, and I think again it's finding something which you are passionate about. Like, I didn't want to fucking learn Welsh in school. I know I'm from Wales, and I know people get annoyed at that, but like I just didn't want to do it. And it's the same with our schooling systems. They're not providing people with what they're really good at.
100%, I agree with that.
Yeah, cool. But I think the psychosomatic one, it dives into how you talk about yourself and how you talk to yourself and becoming the person you want to be and visualizing success before it happens. Because if you speak to any like really successful entrepreneur, they will talk to you about what's your morning formula or what's your morning routine. And I know it's quite a big thing. And like I only over the last few months I've started doing it, and the difference it's made in the way I operate is massive. Where it allows you to be a little bit more organized, but you start reading about yourself almost in the third person on the person you want to become. So subconsciously reprogramming your brain to be that person, and it will happen. Like if you're doing that subconsciously. But it just takes a bit of effort, and you need to be interested in it to do that.
100%.
But that's definitely another good one.
Well, one of the key things that I've learned, like what you talked about with a morning routine, so consistency is essentially what you're talking about. It's consistent, good practices.
Rhythm.
And I some of the things, like I've done things consistently for in different aspects of my life over time, but in recent years, so like the C dips is one of the things I've done it consecutively every single day. So like the consistency with that. With training, not so much. It hasn't been that consistent, but I recognise that because it's not good to train every day anyway. You know what I mean? So I think the C dips and a few of the other things that I've been doing with my business is like I've stayed consistent with that. So one of the key things I do. Have you heard of the Seinfeld strategy?
No.
So James Clear talked about it. So Jerry Seinfeld.
Yes, yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian. he basically put a big year wall planner up on his wall. And he'd mark off a big red X every day where he'd written jokes. Right?
From Atomic Habits.
It's in the book, is it?
Yeah.
There we go. So that's it. That's where literally I got it from James Clear. I haven't got Atomic Habit. Haven't read that book, so I don't know if it was in there. But yeah, he talked about that, and I've done it ever since I read about it. And the effect it makes is profound, because all I've done, right, is to positively impact someone's life. Right, that's my kind of key goal for the day. So it is subjective to the person that I'm helping, like whether or not it'll help their life, but it's the effort on my part to try and do that. So if I've worked with a client, that's kind of one of the days that I can do it. If I've done a workshop, if I've done a live video, for example, where I've talked about this and that, or if I've done a post with a little bit of information in it, those like I kind of go, right, I feel as though as long as some people have digested, if I get a message back and someone says, yeah, I really like this, but this has helped massively, I kind of go, right, that's the tick box for that day, do you know what I mean? So it's only a very slight thing.
Sense of relief.
Yeah, it's a very slight thing, but it builds consistency, and also seeing yourself putting the big red X's. But I got big blue X's on mine. But Jerry Seinfeld's one was literally just to write jokes, and he gave that as advice to like a young comedian. And it's I do think that the power of consistent good practices, orientated in the direction that you want to go in your life, they don't talk about it enough, but I think it's one of the key things you can do.
But it's just going back to put it in your subconscious. Like, how do you do that? You don't just go, I'm going to become, and this goes for everything. It's huge in like lifestyle and fitness and performance. Like, you have to have good habits for it to be a reality. But it's not like an overnight thing. I'll start training and it's there.
I'm going to be fit overnight.
And this is where people, like we briefly chatted about earlier on, go, right, I want to lose weight, I'm going to cut out carbs. Or I'm going to go to the gyms 8 times a week, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And you've got this thing called ego depletion, which is pretty much, it's willpower, another word for willpower. And ego depletion happens when you use all your willpower up. So if you get a good night's sleep, like we discussed, you get this sort of a recharge of willpower every day. And the classic example is, right, I'll start on Monday or New Year's or whatever it is, and they change a million different things, and by the time they get up, they may go to the gym because the motivation's there, or they may not. They may sort of organise it in a different way. I'm going to miss breakfast, I'm going to do intermittent fasting, and then I'm going to do this, and then in work, at lunchtime I'm going to do this. By the time work finishes, they are ego depleted. And I know the word ego like sparks off a different thing, but it is literally, you run out of willpower, so you don't go to the gym on the way home like you planned on. You eat everything in the fridge when you get home just because it's like, oh, fuck it. So this is why you have to have the conversation on consultations with individuals, like starting this journey is like, listen, it's not as easy as I give you a meal plan, because one meal plans don't fucking work, because if you give me a meal plan, there's tomatoes on it, I don't fucking like them, so how good is that? Then that's why nutrition coaching is different. Like, we're going to make changes within your behaviour first, so once we finish this coaching program, however long it is, you don't need me. If you don't need me, I've done my job right, I've created autonomy within you. But I think there's a lot of people who are like, no, I need to keep the client, like retention, and they may need you to stay on for program design for like a fitness program, because things like that take a long time to understand, like what's going on internally within the body, how do I create that stimulus or on an individual to like spark muscle growth, what do I need to do for that? But it's so many variables to just a training program or a meal plan or everything. That's why there's a lot to it, and it's really complex, but people make it complex rather than start being simple. Like intermittent fasting, like everyone raves about it. If someone asks me, I say, okay, we can talk about that. If for one whole year you have created great sleep, you know exactly what you're eating and how much of it, you chew your food 20, 30 times, you drink this amount of water, you walk every day, you do resistance training 3 times a week, you've got stress management, you do them for a year, and we'll talk about intermittent fasting. Because there are benefits to it. But it's like you're doing,
there's other things that take precedence before it.
I had the foundations, and I had a discussion along with someone, I can't remember the word for it, it's like you're minoring in majors. Sort of, I think that's the expression, but not expression, but how people would sort of say that is like you fucking hell, you got to get the basics right first.
So I suppose another example of that then is the sea dipping. So what I do is obviously if you're going in the sea, but you're not, like you said, getting adequate sleep, or your nutrition is not right. Stress level as well. The stress levels, I think, when you go into the sea, it kind of offsets a lot of that, anyways, in that respect. But I think, like you said, in terms of nutrition and diet, if you're going in the sea because you want to build up, that you want to be healthier, that's your kind of outcome that you want to get from it. But then you're disregarding all the other things. I suppose then they should take precedent.
Yeah, completely. And it's great. Like, you know the benefits of going in cold water. I have a cold shower every morning, but like I got to go to the gym early, so I can't make it down to anything like that. But like, I have a cold shower because I know how it makes me feel. It makes me more alert. My cortisol level's a little bit higher. Like, it does create autophagy, which means like all the cells which are sort of not dying, but like sort of on their way out, get cleared out. So there are loads of benefits to cold water. And they feel it, but like that's not the end of the road. It's the same with nutrition. That's not the end of the road. Like, there's so much to this. It doesn't have to be overwhelming either. I mean, me talking about this now, people might be thinking, fuck, that's a lot to do. But that's where a coach should go, right, where do we start? Like, what are the priorities? Is your sleep shit? Okay, let's talk about sleep. Let's get that right.
Would you say sleep is probably the key? So for somebody starting out now, let's say someone who's maybe a bit burnt out with work, or they're like, they not being feeling a bit shit in general, would you say sleep is the first port of call? So checking the sleep quality and the amount of sleep they're getting. What would you say is the first port of call would you go to with a client now? Because again, it's subjective to the individual.
It depends what their goals are and what their work is. It goes back to it depends, which is a shit answer.
Would you say just the basics in general, like water, sleep, sunlight?
So we go off like a baseline fitness. We have baseline basic lifestyle guidelines, and there's 6 of them which you should practice every single fucking day. Now, you're not going to be able to do them all 6 of them initially all day because you get this ego depletion. You just can't do it consistently. So just work on one until you can do it without thinking about it. Become subconscious, done. But a lot of people, the barrier which comes up with people is their patience, and you've got to get them bought in. Like, this, I want you to do this without me. I don't want you like to need me forever. So those are getting adequate amount of sleep. So I'd probably say that's a priority. I'd say water first, because remember those things I said. What would you die from first? Water. So drink water. You'll be surprised. Like, the clients I've had, and they're like, I feel like shit. I can't get motivated. Right, drink more water, and they're like, fucking hell, what's in that? Like, it's just water. Like, you shouldn't be drinking water. That
you know what? Funny if I came across the same thing, right? It was like 1%. 1% dehydration level, which I think generally is when you just get that cotton mouth type thing. When you get a little bit, you feel like, oh, do you know what? I need a bit of water. That's already
dehydrated.
Already too late, and that can create brain fog, anxiety, and
well, it creates stress.
Lack of motivation.
It creates stress on the body, and what happens from there? It's like over time inflammation, which then it doesn't help if you are someone who suffers from anxiety and all that sort of stuff.
That being said,
that being said, but yeah, so I would start with making sure you drink an adequate amount of water, sleep, then. Chewing food, which I would refer to as food hygiene. People think like how clean is your food, because like the fitness industry is massive on talking about how much calorie deficit and quality of food, but no one talks about how you actually eat food. So a good food hygiene would be I prepare my meal so it's fresh. I smell it while I'm preparing it, because that releases the trigger in the brain to say I'm preparing to eat. That's where digestion starts, when you smell your food. So when you talk about mouth-watering food,
it's the salivation from the mouth, isn't it?
It releases saliva, and that saliva, 1, lubricates the food, 2, has enzymes in it which break certain carbohydrates down. So it helps the whole digestive system go through. And 1, you chew your fucking food, you're not swallowing it and it just ending up there. So and it makes us eat slower. Now, if we eat slower, we get a release of another hormone called leptin, which is like internal thermostat on hunger levels. So if I get a release of leptin to the brain, it tells me I'm full. Stop eating, otherwise I'm gonna overeat. Now, if I just shovel, and I did this for years in the military. Like, if you speak to anyone in the military, they get to the mess. It's like, boom, done, get out. You're not allowed, especially for someone whose their goal is to lose weight. sometimes you just say eat really slow, chew through 20 to 30 times, which is fucking frustrating to start with.
It sounds crazy.
I always say, take one bite and put your knife and fork down.
Okay.
Try that next time, and it's hard because we want to be present with what we're eating, and we can eventually become intuitive with our hunger levels. So if I do eat slowly, it allows time for my body to understand, right, you've eaten the adequate amount now. It sends left into the brain to say, stop eating now. And that stop eating now is, I feel full. But how many people like go past that and like, I've still got stuff on my plate. Well, another thing which we could do is buy smaller plates and eat your smaller plates. You still get that satisfaction from clearing your plate. But you eat less, eat slower, we're in tune with our hormones. Then we talk about moving blood daily. Like we said, we're built the same as we were 5 million years ago. What was our lifestyle like then? That's what we're adapted to. It's not sitting down in chairs all day. Like
you'd be on the move, you'd be foraging, you'd be hunting, you'd be going on a bit of a tangent. But I think this is, would you say that everybody or most people are natural born runners, but they just don't practice enough? Would you say that's a fair statement to make?
Everyone
or
can.
We're all built for it.
I mean, again, it comes down to different genetic types, but physically you are built to be able to run. Because every species, not just human beings, like it's like how do they evolve? They evolve to the environment which they're in. And that's how, even when we're talking about adapting to situations, it's the same as physically we adapt to our thing. And if you look at human beings who are like 300 pounds obese plus, I always think about this and I thought, can you imagine you're in a time machine and you took them back to 5 million years ago, what would the people around them feel like? Because it would look different to how everyone else does, but it's because we've evolved to this environment, like being sat down, being able to order food and do this and not have the guidance really, because before we didn't need the guidance, we had to do it, otherwise we were going to die. So moving blood daily is key as well. But to answer your question, everyone should be able to run. But we've just adapted to whatever stimulus we put on us.
No, you've nailed it there. Cause that's what I was going to ask you. That's what I wanted to find out really. Because there's a lot of people that I get a lot, because obviously typically people come to me on Instagram and things like that because of the running I do. They ask me, I know about this and that. What should I do for this? And they just kind of ask me for some feedback, and they'll say like, I'm not a natural runner. I'm not able to run, but I want to get started. One of the key things I always say is like, well, have you tried trial running to start? So they've probably started on tarmac or whatever, and like you said, it's the adaptability. If they've adapted to not running at all, it's gonna hurt at first anyway. You're gonna have shin splints, you're gonna have pains to go through. But I think if you change up your running so that it's more natural, like running on trails and things like that, or and also like we said, it's just adapting in general, so you're not used to sit. If you stop sitting down so often and getting that sort of rest, and then actually doing more movement in general, I think you build up the ability to run. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the question you need to get to before that is, how much do you walk? Because people, like literally the whole need to walk before you run. Like I see it all the time. Is if a client comes in, I've seen coaches like in the past get a client who's overweight, probably a bit embarrassed about being in the gym or feeling uncomfortable themselves. So that's my biggest thing as a coach. You need to have sort of emotional intelligence. Like don't try and embarrass your client anymore. And then they get them running on the running machine. Now every time you put your foot on the floor when you're running, 3 times your body weight goes through your foot every step. So if I put a weighted vest on you and you went for a run, fuck me, you'd feel the difference. So just imagine.
I've done it.
It's a complete different thing. Even a little bit of weight. So you've got to have empathy for people who are a little bit more overweight than they want to be, and they go, right, I'm going to start running. And they start running and it hurts. And the prime example of adapting to the stimulus you put on, I haven't run for ages, and people would like say, oh, you're fit, you do all this stuff. But I haven't run for a while because just that's not what my goals be. I've done ultramarathons before. I've done that sort of stuff. But if me and you went out for a run now, I'd be fucked. Not cardiovascularly, my lungs would be fine, because my muscles aren't used to that. I would really struggle, and it would cause more energy for me to actually run. Same as if someone's shit at swimming. You put them in a pool, the amount of energy they use up to Michael Phelps, like just being really consistent and efficient with movement, it's a complete different thing. So what everyone should go to, and I've got a client at the minute actually, who said to me, like, and this is the thing, like, I know you know David Goggins and all that sort of stuff. It is really inspiring, but at times it makes people again bite off a little bit more than they can chew.
100%.
So he said to me, I want to run a marathon. And he had a bad knee. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm just going to run a marathon. I was like, well, why don't we just change our goal to that's what you want to do? Let's progress. So I wrote a progressive program for him. And honestly, you want to see him like run now. It's really impressive, like how far he's come. But we didn't start running. I put a heart rate monitor on him and said, right, go out for a 45-minute run. If your heart rate gets above like zone 2,
Start
walk.
walking. Yeah.
And people are like, I can't walk. It's not like
Zone training is so I've done a little bit with it, but not much. But like, yeah, that's pretty much what I say to people if they're not going to they're getting into running or they want to run long distances. I'll say if you're not able to talk in full sentences, if you start stepping into the kind of anaerobic zone, isn't it? You know, when you're not able to speak in full sentences, or you feel like you're getting a bit gassed, slow it down. So slow down your average pace by a minute and a half per mile. Like even if it feels too slow, that's a good metric to actually get started on long distance. Because I think, sorry, I cut you off then anyway. But.
But like it's right in what you're saying. A lot of the time, people think if they come on board with me coaching, that I'm gonna go just fucking do it, or it's your mindset. No, we need to physically, what are you capable of doing, and let's give you the minimum effective dose, so you see progress. Because it's fucking, and I've done it. I've not run for ages, so I'm not adapted to run. I go out for a run, I'm like, fuck, I used to be much better running than that. It's depressing. It's like, is it going to make me feel like I want to go run for a run tomorrow? No. Some people, there's psychopaths out there like David Goggins, who will go like, I'm going to fucking do it. And there's a time and a place for that, I think, really.
He's a bit, so I love David Goggins. He's a big inspiration to me, but he is too much. And I've said that for a while, like he's got a unique mindset, but that's his brand as well now, I think, isn't it? And I think people, it does motivate people to do it, but like you said, it can be a bit too much, you know. Like I think with him, if it inspires you to go out and step outside your comfort zone and do some crazy shit and do things that you previously thought were impossible, I know that's exactly what I did. I've gone up and it was pretty much absorbing his content. It got me to do a marathon when I'd done about 15 half marathons.
It's inspiring, it massively is.
Yeah. But it got me doing ultras and stuff. But like you said, I think it's better and more healthy to take a more sensible approach to it. Like my mate Hanford, I don't know if you listen to this, but he went out. I think he never run over more than. I think he ran 8 miles was his max. Like, and he hadn't been running long. He'd be doing like 5Ks and 10Ks. I think his most was 8 miles. And he went, fuck, I'm gonna go run a marathon. And I ran it with him for the last say 9 or 10 miles. And when I met him, it was about 17 miles in, and he hit a big fucking wall. Like his knee was gone, chafing, like he was fucked, And I think the last 3 or 4 miles.
Then you have to switch to what your brain's telling you. Then. Yeah. But you have to, if you train progressively, it's like, how do we not get to that stage? But when you get there, you have to have the mentality to think, let's just fucking do it. If it's for an event or whatever. But that's when we talk about athletes aren't necessarily healthy. Like if you look at, for instance, like CrossFit, bear in mind, this is like, I used to do it and batter myself every fucking day. I'm like, am I going to be able to walk when I'm 60? Like, but you don't even think about that. Like, what is my goal now? Like, people think I train all day, every fucking day, and I ain't got time. I train for an hour most days, because it's my form of meditation, like sort of thing. Like I can. There's no phones, there's no computers or anything. I just get into a zone and I train, and it makes me feel good. But like I don't train so I'm on my back like I used to every session. Every now and again I might do it as just to show that I can adapt to stress, or I sort of a bit of a gut check, or can you still fucking deal with it? But most of my training is like, well, if you look at, we should be, if you're someone who's looking at health, and when we talk about health as a goal, we agree upon it's, right, when I'm 80, I don't want to be stuck in a chair in a nursing home, someone feeding me, spoon feeding me. Like, that should be everyone's fucking goal. And some people, like, I have to have a conversation with them for them to realise, like, fucking hell, it's not just me getting shredded for holiday, which is coming in 8 weeks, because that doesn't concern me. Like I mean, it's easily achievable for people, not easily, but you just got to have some sort of structure to what you're doing and someone hold you accountable. But when we talk about how do we get there, and it's through those lifestyle guidelines which I discussed, again, getting daily sunlight exposure, stress management, because that'll fucking age you quite rapidly.
Yeah.
Like, I had hair before I started fucking business.
But on that actually, so like, I don't know, people listening to this, I've been to prison a couple of years ago. Everyone who's been in prison long term, right? So like, there was a few lifers in there, like murderers and things like that I'd seen. They don't age. They still look like 20. You know,
Why?
they literally still look 20 or 25. Again, like you said, that it's the one major thing. It's not the fucking food, I can tell you that.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
probably, you know, it's not going to be the gym because you can get exposure to the gym here. Like you said, it's the stress.
It's rhythm of you've got a structure, your body knows what's going on. You haven't got stress, you're sleeping fucking every night.
Yeah.
Like when I was in the military as a PTI, it wasn't like the military. It was like a 9 to 5 job or 8 to 5 job. Every now and again you got dicked for something to do on a weekend. Fuck me, I slept like a baby. Like no financial stress at all, like nothing. And it was like, it's only when you come out of that where you really see the effects of stress, what's going on. But if you get all those things in line and you work on them, like focus on one thing at a time until it becomes subconscious, right, I'm going to move on to the next one, do that until you are doing this daily without even thinking about it, then you can really focus on things which are a little bit more advanced, like fasting or other sort of protocols like that, rather than people like to use things like intermittent fasting as a band-aid for a shitty lifestyle, and it doesn't fucking work.
Yeah. It's like a hard, not even a hard reset. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I know what you mean. It's a band-aid to make them feel as though they're moving towards a healthier lifestyle. Again, I think it can be a prerequisite sometimes. So it can be something that people latch onto, and then everything else comes from it. You know, but at the same time, like you said, I think it's recognizing that that's only one aspect of how you can get to health. Do you know? Good
well,
health.
let's just take intermittent fasting, because it's something which has happened, and people are like, oh, I'll just do that.
Yeah.
If you're not sleeping well, like I said earlier on, your ghrelin level is going to be higher. So if you're not eating until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to be fucking starving all day, like until you eat. And that's going to be emotionally hard, which adds stress to you.
Yeah.
And it's like if you look at stress as a bucket, what we don't want that bucket to do is overflow. So how do we do that? Well, we make sure we're sleeping properly, so that bucket, the water in the bucket doesn't rise. I think every time the stress gets added, it comes up and up and up. And if we can get that right, all people have to do is resistance train 3 times a week. And again, I think a lot of girls worry thinking they're going to get massive, but fuck me, it's hard to put on muscle.
I meant to ask about that earlier when you mentioned about it, because you said that as one of the key things, the new resistance training. So run me through that. What's the idea behind that, like resistance training? How is that beneficial to the overall health?
So for our when we talk about metabolic rate, for you to increase your metabolic rate, you need to have more muscle mass.
Right. Because
muscle is like an expensive tissue. It takes a lot of calories to maintain it. So say like I was someone eating a 2,000 calorie diet, and that was my maintenance. So if I ate 2,500, I'd start putting on some body fat if I wasn't moving to that amount. Now if I put on muscle mass and my maintenance now is 2,500, I can eat that and not put on weight or anything.
Okay.
So the more muscle mass you have, the higher your metabolic rate is. So you can eat more. Everyone wants to fucking eat more. Like no one wants to eat less. But to have that in place, we need to be in like a sufficient amount of protein. And everyone thinks like you just have to sink protein shakes all day. That's not the case at all. We want to ideally get it from food, like ideally like fresh food, if we can get it. Again, protein shakes are a supplement. It means if you can't get that, you supplement it with this.
Okay.
There are other good times, like this is more talking down performance. If you had a protein shake after training, then it's going to absorb into the system a little bit quicker and spark protein synthesis, muscle protein synthesis. But that's talking to athletes. When we're talking about general health, it doesn't fucking matter. Like as long as you get your amount of protein in that day, that's all that counts.
Right.
But on another side of things, as we age, what we want to aspire to is maximum physical potential. So each of us has one of those, but not many of us actually pursue it. Because if we reach that maximal physical potential, or even if we don't, at some point in our life, we're going to start declining because we age.
Yeah.
And what that called is atrophy. So our muscles shrink, they start to die. Like that's why when you look at older people, they generally shrink compared to where they were like in their 30s or 40s or 20s, they're still growing.
Yeah.
So the more muscle mass we can have, and I'm not saying like...
Not bodybuilding.
No, I'm not talking about that because that's not healthy either. And like to have a sufficient amount of muscle on their skeleton, so when that atrophy does start to happen, we're at a much better place when we're 60, 70, 80 years old.
Right, okay.
So that's why we want to be doing that.
So you're talking about, so it's not just it's not just about like looking healthy or being healthy like right in the now, but it's the long-term effects of it. So, and bone health and things like that, I'm guessing. If you've got, is it safe to say, if you're doing resistance training, obviously in theory you should have better bone health or the ability to hold your structure better when you're older. Is that?
Yeah. Well, what the muscles do? They move bone. Right. That's what they do. So we're held up by skeletons. And then how do we move that skeleton is by muscles. Okay. So the better we can work those muscles, but then again, when we talk about resistance training, it depends on where you are, whether you're a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced. What the beginners need to work on different phases of strength. So a beginner would work on motor control. Yeah. So that is how well does my brain connect to my muscles? How can I motor skills really? So what you would get, this is where a lot of beginners would go, I'll use weights machines because they're safer. If you're talking about safety, you're going too heavy. So what I would do with a beginner, this is where they would need coaching, because once they understand how to do it, they don't need the coach anymore. But like they need to have the knowledge because we're not taught this in school. No, we're actually not. I will never ever do the electrics in my house. Yeah. So I don't know how to fucking do it. So what's the difference with fitness? I don't understand it. Where people think, oh yeah, I should know what I'm doing. I'll just get in there, throw this about. But beginners should be using dumbbells and like free weights or body weight stuff, very light. Like if, for instance, if they were going to do a shoulder press with a dumbbell, it would look like this first, because their brain can't connect to the muscles. So over time, our body's adapting to that because it knows if I don't do this right, I'm going to die. That's what your body thinks. I need to survive. So it's like, right, my brain's connecting, and it's like, and it turns into this. So when I start doing that, then I can add some weight on, and then I can switch from that into muscle endurance or strength endurance. Once I master strength endurance, then I can work into maximal contractions and like 1 rep maxes and that sort of stuff. But everyone likes the ego lifting, and that's why they end up there. Well, they start there. Yeah. Do you know what you said for there, right? That I remember when the first gym I was in was Penland Gym, right? So it's my local gym, a couple of streets up from me. And I always remember that, right? So like when I started lifting, you say you're all over the shop, or like when you see other people, like someone who's younger, or maybe like you said, more built, like for running, for example, but then you see them trying to lift weights, and they're trying to lift not necessarily something that's too heavy for them, but you can see it's kind of going all over the shop. And like I essentially I never really thought too much about it, but I guess that was down to just the muscle mass in general. Like they don't lift that often or whatever. Like it was just maybe the weight that they were trying to lift, they weren't able to get it right. But like you said, the fact that the brain connecting with the muscles creates that not swift movement, synchronized movement, that flow. I never really thought about it like that. Well, look at babies when they learn to walk. They don't just get up and just walk or swag about. It's like, because their brain's trying to figure out, like, and even when we go back to sleep, depends on what age you are, depends on how much sleep you need. That's why our schooling system isn't really synced with the age of kids, really, because we know sleep allows us to grow. If we don't sleep, we're not going to grow. So what are you doing from 0 to 24, 25 years old? You're physically growing. So you need more sleep. So generally, that's why babies sleep all day, because they fucking grow like that. Like you blink your eyes and they're like another kilo on them. So as we go through age, we require less sleep because we've almost stopped growing at some point. So that's why elderly don't actually need as much sleep as people in their younger years. But that's why, like, babies can't, they're all over the shop with everything they do. If you give them a rattler, they're like, because their brain can't connect to it. And it's the same with weight training. That's really interesting. I never thought about it to that extent. Like you said, you do see it when you're with kids. They are kind of all over the shop when they're younger. But you just think, oh, it's a baby. You don't really go into the science or
the whole meaning behind it.
Mm.
That's really interesting. I mean, with so going back to baseline and everything you're doing now. So obviously you've been running it for what, 2 years, 2.5 years?
Well, actually, it was we missed our 2-year anniversary. It was like it was last month. And we were like, shit, and we put a post saying we forgot. We closed. We were like, it's hard to sort of keep track of what day it is.
Well, the last year's gone crazy fast, to be fair. What's your vision for baseline? Like, where do you want to take it, or like even if with yourself and the online coaching and stuff like that? What's the long-term vision?
I don't do so much online coaching as much anymore because I like where I got to. I was like, how do I do this on a group, in a group environment, and deliver as much as we possibly can. So what do people need? They need the basics and they need to be held accountable and they need the education. So what we're trying to do is we're putting together this sort of 6-week challenge where we're going to get people in and they sign up to like our app as they come in, and we get them to track like the food that they're eating. And it all depends on what their goal is. But most people, to get healthy, they want to drop a bit of weight and just feel more energy, because the reason why if you are a little bit overweight is you feel a bit drained is because your body's overworking from all the inflammation from the excess fat which you've got. So by losing a couple of pounds, the amount of energy that like people feel, it's like, fucking hell, where's this come from? But look, during those 6 weeks, we really focus down on the behaviours, so those 6 lifestyle guidelines which we spoke about, and give them the education. So like either myself or one of the other coaches will be giving them the presentation in the first week on, listen, this is sleep, this is how bad it is if you don't do this. Not in the next year, but in the next 10, 20 years, your whole life, because that's what we're ultimately, we want to be in fact, someone sent me a quote the other day, his name's Capacity Coach on Instagram. He said, I want to die young as late as possible.
Okay, okay.
So I was like, that should be what our goal is. So they'll learn about sleep, and they'll learn how to create good quality sleep. Then we'll move on to the next week, and this may take people more than a week, but they have the understanding of how to do it. They'll have lifetime access to this training then, so if they're like, fuck, I'm off on my sleep, I need to go back and watch that, then they can go back and watch that. Then we do the same for chewing food. Like if I just told you, chew food more. Like if anyone tells me to do anything, I say, why? So I say, this is the reason why we're going to do this, and it's like because of gut health, because of digestion and all these other things. And then there's more of a buy-in to it then. Like people are not just like, well, I'm just sitting here chewing my food for no reason. Like there's a reason behind everything that we're going to ask you to do. So after that 6 weeks, ultimately we want them to understand these behaviours which they need to practice every day, which isn't a massive effort, but initially it might be. And then from there, then they're going to come into they're not classes, they're sessions, I would call them, because it's sort of a group PT just on a little bit of a larger scale, where we actually coach people and we have different tiers depending on what your ability is. So like I said, if you're a beginner and we have a session which is resistance, you're going to be like this. So you're not going to be doing the same thing you'll be doing the same pattern of movement, say like a press, but you won't be doing a barbell press, you'll be doing dumbbell press until this stops doing this and into this. And then it's just trying to create education, hold people accountable, and give them the right dose of what they need at the ability, or meet them where they're at as well. And
it's almost like it is an academy to an extent.
Pretty much, And it's like, well, from a business side thing, it's like how are we different to everyone else? Because most gyms, like people think of a gym as like it's a gym, like you go to Penland Gym. What difference is Penland Gym to somewhere else? And this is why, like we've got David Lloyd's, which isn't far from us. And it's just and like Simply Gym as well. It's not they're not independently owned. Like there are independent gyms around, like Main Ways. Like he's come up and we had a chat. And he's got the same passion as I have. You want to help people.
It's the personal touch, isn't it? So I know there's Chris Way. He's been he's been right.
I've never met Chris. I don't know him, but I've seen the gym that they got going on up there.
Well, I was going to say he's been going at the kind of the commercial gyms through lockdown, because they've still been charging members, but they haven't been doing anything for them. Whereas like the likes of yourself now, you're putting a lot of content on your personal Instagram and things like that with it's things that people can take away.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You've kept consistent with that, and I think that's the difference when it comes to that. Is you've got the personal touch to try and
I mean, we went down the road of what should we do here? Should we do lives? Like fucking hell, everyone's doing lives. Like we want to educate people. If people are educated, they understand the principles behind what they're doing. They're more likely to change their behaviours. So we had a small Facebook group for our members which came in, and we sort of went through week by week.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about nutrition yet, and this is why like fucking hell, I've got all that to deal with first. Like those things will make you drop weight massive. Obviously, you have to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. But there's a difference between losing weight and body recomposition. So that's holding on to muscle or increasing muscle while losing fat. Because one, if you don't sleep properly and you're on a fat loss program or weight loss program, 70% of that weight loss could come from muscle, lean tissue, because you're not getting stage 3 or 4. So you're not getting restorative sleep. So you're holding on to the fat and the muscle's going, which means you've got a lower metabolic rate. So it's the opposite of what you actually want. The scales might say you're changing. Yeah. You look in the mirror and you're like, fuck, I look worse. Right. And like that's where we need to have those behaviours in place. And then when we get onto nutrition, again, it's not like here's your meal plan, here's carbs, fats, protein, and all the rest.
You're looking at the individual.
Yeah, like what do you need to work on? Most people don't eat enough protein. And again, it's not like we should be going around like eating like bodybuilders, because again, that's not healthy. But they should be eating a sufficient amount of protein to, one, increase muscle mass to a certain extent. Again, with women, they don't have testosterone, so they're not going to touch a weight just go boom. I think most blokes wish that would happen, but it doesn't. I've been training for like since like I can't even remember not training. I'm not massive. So I think like just giving that education across is the key thing, and then breaking it down to, first of all, I need to eat enough protein. Can you do that for me? Yeah. Okay, well show me you can do that, then we'll have a discussion on fruits and veg. Now I want you to eat 500 grams of veg every single day. Right. Like each day. And honestly, you just change small things, and this is the book Atomic Habits, like lays it all out. You make all these small adjustments, and the impact it has is fucking just profound. It changes people's life, and not so much that, like their confidence in what they're actually capable of doing, which may open up other doors, like we spoke about. That
what you said there, right? So like I've learned a lot from that in one fucking, literally the small little bit of information that you've given. So like that's the benefit of coaching, isn't it? You know what I mean? Is actually getting people on board. Like I said to you before, I think before the podcast, when it comes to nutrition, I haven't got a fucking clue. Like I've
never been taught it. I don't know how to do the electrics.
That's it. And I think that's the problem. Well, we won't get into that too much, but the schooling system in general, it's not predicated on teaching things that are really that beneficial to life. I think it's an old system.
In fact, it's funny you say that. I've still got to get this sorted for them, but I had a call from a message on Facebook actually from one of the teachers at Morrison Comp where I used to go to. And they were after some people to just put a bit of a video together just to say like what I've done and in the past, and hopefully like it just inspires some of the people. I think because at the minute, like how these kids are surviving through not being able to go to school and just not interacting socially with people, like it must be horrific.
That's the thing he went to school for, really.
Exactly.
He enjoyed about it.
So that's one thing which, like, at some point I want to be able to do is to go into schools and give them some form of education in saying, like, okay, well, these are important because it's going to make you live longer. What's the point of knowing this much of this when you're not able to function properly and perform at something or express yourself? Because that's the other thing. Why should you do fitness? It should be to live a larger life, to be able to go and like swim the sea, to go and climb a mountain and like do all these experience life, because we only get one of them. So the fitter you are to a certain extent, to where it starts becoming a bit unhealthy and your intentions becomes more of an addiction, which again, that stress hormone cortisol, people in the CrossFit community, like, because I was addicted to it, I was like, if I'm not on my back at the end tasting blood, I want to fucking work out. That's not healthy behaviours either. But that's why we should do fitness. That's why we should like really try and do, because otherwise, if we don't feel good and go and do these things, we end up creating it from different stimuluses, like having like drinks on the weekend or drugs or any other like addiction which is bad for us. because our brain doesn't know the difference. The same chemicals get released.
Yeah.
It's just on, okay, so how are you releasing those chemicals? Are you doing it through good habits, which are actually good for you, or are you doing it through bad things? And it's just trying to get people buy-in, but the problem is it's hard because Instagram's fucking it all up for everyone.
No, I mean, I always talk about Instagram on this podcast. Like, I love Instagram. It's the one. It's the one I go to, but it is one of the worst ones. It really is. Like you said, it's very deceptive about what people look at and they see. Oh, it's this person's in good shape or this and that, whatever. But like you said, they don't see the effort and the work that's gone into that. And if somebody's working full time and they're not, it makes it difficult, doesn't it? It does make it, and comparison is. What's the saying? Comparison's the thief of joy.
That's the one.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key issues with Instagram. But we won't get into that. I think we've talked for 2.5 hours already. I think, to be fair, that's gone very fucking quick. Very, very quick. So for everybody listening, if you want to like plug the business, social media, your own social media and stuff like that, or anything else.
Well, I'm not a massive social media person anyway. I just pretty much use it to log my sort of training and give some information out, but like all of our stuff like the stuff which we're working on baseline will be pushed through that. Obviously we've transitioned from before this COVID thing to being a gym and you just come and do your own thing, and we still have that option, but we want to provide people with the education, so again you can do this on your own at some point, we're more of an education system which keeps you accountable and gives you some coaching on how to do the things, so you can go and live a larger life, be more confident in the body that you've got. That's where our sort of ethos and values are going really on our sort of mission. For those who, personal trainers or coaches that do feel like they struggle with business or setting up systems or how to coach people, I'm sort of going into that sort of offer of helping them out with that and how to actually run a sustainable online or in person personal training or coaching. You don't have to be a personal trainer, it can be any coach. And how to do that, mainly from the mistakes I've learned and then from the coaches which I've learned from as well.
Awesome. And what's the Instagram handle or the Facebook handle now?
The Facebook handle?
Or anyone?
Oh, sorry, the Baseline Fitness UK. I'm under Dom D Hodge, I think it is, but you're probably better off watching the.
Well, the fucking video you've done. What was it? Like you've done a backflip. I showed George. A designated camera guy here, showed him the backflip into a handstand walk that you've done. Like, I was just, the first time I seen it, I was like, fuck, but that's the gymnast, isn't it? But no, I really appreciate you coming on. Like, I was going to say, the amount of info that's in there for people is going to be fucking amazing. So, appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Cheers, guys.
Perfect.